Hey, AB Calculus students. 2004, question number 5. This is one of the most popular types of questions on the AP exam, free response. They call this the FTC question. We did one of these right before you guys left for spring break. Anyways, here's something very important, and it didn't happen on the one we did before, but it happens so much. They give us a graph. So here's the graph they give us. And then they provide us this vital piece of information. And ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about ready to do is the key to unlocking this question. You need to get more information. You need to take the derivative of both sides. If you take the derivative of this side, you now have g prime x. And if you take the derivative, I gotta make sure, can I even see that? Okay, good. Sorry. And if I take the derivative of the other side, the derivative destroys the antiderivative, and the x will jump in. And now over here I have f of x. So if I take the derivative of g of x, I get g prime x. If I take the derivative here, the derivative destroys the antiderivative, the x jumps in. Times chain, but the chain, the derivative of x is an extra 1. Now, why is this so important? They were calling this the graph of f, and it is the graph of f, but f now has a new name. This is the graph of f, and I want you to put a little g prime x next to where it says f. This is crucial. If you don't understand or get this, you got some problems, okay? So you've got to understand this goes here. So they will always give you something like this. Remember I said you can always get more information by taking the derivative from both sides. And this new information is crucial. Because now that I know this is the graph of g prime x, well, what can you do with the graph of g prime x? You can make a sign chart of g prime x to learn when is g increasing, decreasing, maxes, and mins. I can also look at the slopes of g prime x to make a sign chart of its derivative, g double prime x, and find out about concavity and points of inflection. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with the first question. The first question is, what is g of 0? All right, now to understand what is g of 0, we're going to go back to this first one. I'm going to put a 0 here, I'm going to put a 0 here. So g of 0 is the integral from -3 to 0 of f of x. Now, I do have to make sure these are in the right order. If you don't have the lower number first, I'm sorry about the glare. Can I get rid of the glare? Glare gone. No, can't get rid of the glare. Okay, I do have to make sure, I'll put it down here. From -3 to 0 of f of x, you need to make sure that the lower number's on the bottom. If the lower number was not on the bottom, we'd have to flip it. The price to pay is a negative. Okay, so all we're trying to do in this problem is find the area. G of 0 will be this area right here. So the area from 0 to -3 to 0. So here's -3, here's 0, and what I would probably do is break this up into a rectangle and a triangle. So that rectangle is 3 times 1 plus, and this triangle, it's 1/2 base times height, so it's 1/2, the base is 3, the height is 1. So here I get 3 plus, and this is 3/2 or 1.5. You can leave it like this. And there's your answer. That's what g of 0 is. But if you want to be fancier, you can make this and combine it, and you can get, 4.5 or 9/2. That works as well. Okay. So anyways, that's the first part of the first question. How do you find g of 0? Now, the second part is insanely easy if you did my work from before. If you've written the relationship now that g prime x is f of x, so I'll write it up here, g prime x is f of x. Now you plug in a 0 here, which means you plug in a 0 here. Folks, one step further, by the way, with this, I would take the derivative now one more time. Now you have all the information, g of x, g prime x, g double prime x. All right, anyways, that could be very important on a question. Okay, so we want to know what is g prime 0. G prime 0 is simply f of 0. Well, if this is the graph of f, f of 0 is simply what's that ordered pair right there. That's the ordered pair 0, comma 1. F of 0 is simply 1. So g prime 0 is f of 0, which is 1. Alright, so those are my two answers for part A, g prime 0, and we already said g of 0 is 9 over 2. Alright, part B says on the open interval, where will g attain a maximum? A relative maximum. Well, what sign chart helps us figure out maxes and mins and increasing and decreasing? It's a sign chart of the derivative. So I want to make a sign chart of g prime x. Now, remember, g prime x is f of x. So if I write g prime x, they know it. If I have written down that f of x is equal to g of x, I need to write this down. It can't just be an idea in my head. They literally look for this, okay, to give you points. If I've written down this relationship, then when I'm making a sign chart of g prime x, this is the graph of g prime x. So what goes on a sign chart is where things are equal to 0. So it's equal to 0 at -4, and at 1, and at 3. I think this would be a good time to also make sure this graph doesn't go too far. -5 and 4. Okay. And now signs. So this is the graph of it. It's the graph of f, but we learned it's also called g prime x. Very important. Okay, below the curve, above the curve, above the curve, below the curve. So negative values, positive values, still positive values, and then finally negative values. So when we have a maximum, well, decreasing and increasing makes that a minimum. Increasing and still increasing, nothing, and increasing and decreasing, that's what we want. So you would say there is a relative maximum at x equals 3, and now you have to justify. So because g prime x, if you have not labeled your sign chart, you can't say this. So you have to make sure you've labeled the sign chart so they can make the connection to your work. Because g prime x changes from positive to negative values at this point, or whatever. I mean, g prime x changes from positive to negative. That's good enough. But, you know, why not be thorough? All right, part C says find the absolute minimum value of g on the closed interval. Okay, this is going to be a great question, but it's going to be a great amount of work. Now, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to use this sign chart of g prime. Okay, remember, this is my sign chart of g prime. This is the graph of f, but it's also called g prime. And I'm going to use this sign chart to see who can win the absolute max or min awards. Now, we know who can win the absolute max or min awards. Endpoints or critical points. Critical points are where the derivative, g prime x, is equal to 0. Now, all of them could win either a max or min award in the beginning. But since we're looking specifically for the minimum value, we want to get rid of some of these as options. So let's just go ahead and say that g starts off up here, and then notice it's decreasing, and then increasing, and then increasing some more, and then decreasing. So the only ones that could truly be an absolute minimum are those two. So the idea is that if I can find those two values, I can go ahead and find out basically what's the absolute minimum and the absolute, which one's the absolute minimum. So off to the side, I'm going to write down what I'm looking for. I'm looking for g of -4, and I'm looking for g of 4. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Thank you. You were very helpful. All right. So, I first want to find, let's start with g of -4. Just like earlier, I can plug this into this equation. G of -4, you put a -4 here. So g of -4 is the area from -3 to -4. But these are in the wrong order. This is crucial. If they're in the wrong order, you got to flip it, and the price to pay is a negative. So it's a negative, and now we can try this. Okay, so So how am I going to find this? I just need to find this simple area here. What is that area? Now, first of all, it's a triangle, but it's a triangle below the curve. But since it's below the curve, we're going to say this right here has an area that is negative. Negative because it's below the curve. That's important. And now, when I go to find this area here, I'm going to have to do 1/2 base times height. It's a triangle. So 1/2, the base is a 1, the height is a 2. So this negative and this negative are going to make a positive, and then this multiplies to give us 1. So we get g of -4 equals 1. I'm going to put this up here, and I'm going to check my work and make sure that that's what they say online. They do not say it's 1, they say it's -1. Oh, wow, hi. I'm Mr. Pygott. I can count. I thought I was finding this area right here. I am not finding this area right here. If you guys notice, that's -5. I should have been finding the area of this little triangle here. Wow. Okay, I gotta be able to count spaces. That's -3, that's -4. Okay, I did it. And that triangle is still 1/2 base times height, but this is above the curve. So that triangle has a positive area there. Wow. Okay, so now it's negative, and this is 1. So that's where I get the -1 that they have online. I'm so smart. Okay. Next, I need to find g of 4. Now, folks, you should already know g of 4 is not the correct answer. Remember our sign chart that we had below? Before that went negative, positive, positive, negative. We said the graph went down, and then up, up, and down. Now, look at the up and up. We know this means the graph was increasing, but the amount of area tells you increasing by how much. Do you see how much area this is? It went up by a lot, and then it went up by even more. So it went up by a lot here. That's a ton of area. And then here, that's even a little bit more area. And at the very end, it only goes down a bit. So we should instinctually know that it went up a lot more than it went down, because these two areas are a lot bigger than this little area here. We still have to find the value to prove that this one is less than this one, but I'm not going to simplify my answer because it's going to be horrible. But I wanted you to see how I knew that g of 4 was not going to be the winner here. Anyways, so g of 4 is the area from -3 to 4. Alright. So these are in the right order, so I'm good to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this area here. Now, I already know this area. I do. Remember we did this in part A. We found this area was 4.5 or 9/2 from part A. So I'm just going to do 4.5 plus, so that took care of all this. Now I need to find the area all the way to 4. Now to get to 4, I have to deal with this crap, and this is not very fun. This area right here is a rectangle with a semicircle subtracted out. Yuck. So it's a rectangle, 2 times 1, base times height, minus half of a circle. This circle has a radius of 1, so it's minus, because we're subtracting out this circle, it's half a circle, so 1/2 pi r is 1 squared. So again, this was 4.5, this little area here was the rectangle minus the semicircle, and now, do you guys see how these are the same areas? I can add that and then subtract that, but one of them's above and below the curve, so one's positive, one's negative. They're going to cancel out anyways, but if you want to. One of them has, the one above has the area of a half, and the one below has the area of -1/2. Now here's the thing, I don't feel like simplifying this. All I need to prove is that this, g of 4, is less than this. Remember earn it? All I have to do is say, hey, this right here is greater than g of -4. Okay, so this is g of 4, this one's smaller. This is definitely smaller than this. How do I know? I just know. Great. Okay, so now I can say because this is greater than this, g of 4, which equals -1, is the absolute minimum. And the problem is asking for the absolute minimum, which means they want the y value. But if I write g of 4 equals -1, I have the x and the y value. If you're not sure which one they're asking for, you've taken care of it and it's good. Now part C takes a lot of work, but it also is worth a lot of points. Actually, not that many. It's only worth 3 points. Part D is worth 2 points and it takes a second. Sometimes on a test you're like, I know how to do this. It's going to take a long time. Maybe I'll just skip it and then come back. Part D, points of inflection. Part D is going to go insanely quick. So remember earlier we took the derivative of g of x and we got g prime x equals f of x. And if we take the derivative again, we get g double prime x equals f prime x. Well, obviously in this problem, we need, for points of inflection, we need a sign chart of the second derivative. And making a sign chart of g double prime x is the same as making the sign chart of f prime x. Either way, if this is g prime x and we want g double prime x, we need to be looking at the slopes. So if we look at the slopes, I have positive slopes until I get to here, which is -3. Then I have negative slopes until I get to here, so negative slopes until I reach 1. Then I have positive slopes until I reach 2. And then I have negative slopes until I reach 4. Now, second derivative. This means concavity. Concave up, concave down, that's a point of inflection. Point of inflection, point of inflection. So our point of inflections would be -3, 1, and 2. And now we have to justify it. I'm going to show you 2 ways of justifying it. One of the ways is just to talk about this sign chart. If you haven't made this sign chart and connected the fact that this is this, then they're not going to give you the points. But if you've labeled your sign chart and you've mentioned the second derivative is the same as this, you can just say the easiest thing, because g double prime x changes signs. Okay? If you did not label your sign charts, a safe thing you could always do is just talk about the graph. What happens at these points, -3, 1, and 2? Look at -3, look at -1, look at -2. If you're looking at the graph changed from increasing to decreasing or from decreasing to increasing at this point. The graph of f went from increasing to decreasing or decreasing to increasing at these points. So if you look online, it says because f of x changes from increasing to decreasing or decreasing to increasing. It's a lot more to write down. This is an easier thing to write down, but you can't write this down and have it count unless you've labeled your sign chart and made the connection between everything. All right, that's it. That's question number 2. It's a lot longer than I wanted it to be, but it's a very important topic. So please pay attention. Bye.